Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to 321 No Kidding. Bobby the Awesome here on day 17 of the Fearless 30 Challenge. And today's prompt, I think I need to give you some context around. The prompt to us was to share fearlessly our hero's journey. Now, if you're not familiar with the concept of hero's journey, let me explain to you what it is, or at least this is the way I understand it. I've heard this through when we wrote our book, which I think is why I have a book background today, as well as through marketing with Russell Brunson. So the concept is when you read a story or watch a movie, and I guess Lord of the Rings has this really good, except for I've never watched Lord of the Rings, so I don't know what that is, but the hero's journey in those places, and the example that got used with me from the book writing adventure was the Wizard of Oz. So Dorothy went on her hero's journey where she went from just thinking things were simple in the land of Oz, and then she runs into all these obstacles along the way, and the premise is the hero kind of like takes a step forward, gets kicked in the teeth, takes a step forward, gets kicked in the teeth, but they overcome all the things at the end of the day. And there's actually like a much more formal template than what I'm saying. But when they talk about the hero's journey, that's kind of what they're talking about, the story of the character and the setbacks, because they generally don't win until the end of the movie, right? I think Russell talks about it with the car movie, which I didn't see that either. I guess it's a cartoon, but normally the ending, though, isn't necessarily about winning, which is why I think he shared the car movie. It was more about what did the lesson that the character learned. So obviously my journey was with addiction, and the lessons are more than a 10 or 15-minute podcast, so we're not going to go quite into that amount of detail, but we were challenged to kind of take us back. And if you haven't heard my interpretation of my journey, it goes a little something like this. I believe that I became a gambling addict to avoid ending up an alcoholic or a drug user. Luckily, I was too afraid of cocaine, so I never escalated much beyond marijuana. I was too afraid of putting something up my nose, and I was too scared to put a needle in my arm. And I remember consciously saying that as a young person. And I was still, though, having my drug of choice, which was gambling. I was playing nickel dime poker, as a kid at family picnics and arcades. Of course, if you listen to me for a minute, you know that my stand on arcades is that they're gambling for children. And then by 15, 16, I had access to money and jobs, and I was buying lottery tickets, scratch offs. And by the time I was 18, 19, I was sneaking into the casinos. And once it became legal, then I didn't have to just waste minimum bets. And it was a different landscape than it is today, which is part of what's so frightening about today, is because gambling is just everywhere and anywhere, and the access is ridiculous. I'm not even sure that all casinos are 21 anymore. I think you can get in at 18, depending on where they are and if they have alcohol and whatever the rules of the state are. So, at any rate, the casino ramped up, the drinking ramped up in the background. Uh, I didn't know it until there was a Christmas Eve that me and one of my besties, we went to the bar after work. It was like one of those half day things, and we met, and there was a place where we can get buy one get one free mojitos. And I'm already out of rehab. I haven't been gambling for a year or two at this point. Um and we get like really drunk. I think I got her in trouble with her family. And I remember my fella being like really deliberate about pointing out the excess alcohol. And in my mind, it was a holiday. I could walk home from where we were, no harm, no foul. regardless, that was one of the conversations where I remember sticking out about my drinking and coming to acknowledge that drinking was another coping vehicle, the way that gambling was. I kind of grasped the concept that gambling was an escape because I wasn't using the alcohol like in my prior years, my early years, but that phone call and the way things happened. So I was acknowledging the alcohol I was using for coping, but I didn't want to give up alcohol yet at that time. And I think the following New Year's, so yeah, so that must have been 2018, New Year, Christmas Eve of 2018. So 2019 comes, and my New Year's resolution is I can drink as long as I'm not using it for coping. And this would be kind of an example of the hero's journey, right? So if I did it, made it the whole year, the movie would be over and, the end. But instead, I did it 2 or 3 times where I used it to escape. And maybe it was more than that, but consciously coping. Like I remember having a really shitty day at work, and this ties into how I believe everything happens for a reason, but it was a shitty day at work. It was a shitty day with the guy. And I decided I was going to go out and I was going to find some trouble. And I was going to get hammered, and I was deliberate. Yeah, I'm coping with a shitty day. And what ended up happening was I ended up the first bar I went to, this taxi driver was like breathing in my food as he talked, like he was just one of those in my faces. So I ended up leaving that bar and going to another one. And instead of getting hammered, I got an introduction to the movie The Secret. And the bartender was just telling me kind of about law of attraction in the universe. And that was kind of my first real introduction to it. So there'd be like a little win in the hero's journey story. Anyway, so the drinking coming to a head, the gambling coming to a head. And then even after, once I was in recovery and having the year that I did in 2020 and 2021, with the amount of death and loss and grieving and none of which, by the way, as a general rule, had to do with the pandemic. I actually like the plane. I enjoyed the pandemic from the lens of my living room in my life. Like I was working out more, I had more time for myself. God, like the world just slowed down. I didn't have to feel guilty because I wasn't missing Zumba class or whatever. If I wanted to go on my bike, I went on my bike. If I wanted to take a ride, I took a ride. Like there was no traffic. It was quite wonderful for my personal development. And if I wanted to see Blue October, they were playing like every Friday, every other Friday night, doing a show online. And it was just very therapeutic, growing thing that, and I didn't gamble or drink, but I still had all this shit going on. And that's kind of the essence of a hero's journey. I think in 2020, I lost 6 people in the course of the 6 months, including, one of our recovery coaches, Uncle Hank, who was like instrumental in my life from work and personal. Just very lot of deaths in a short period of time. And then 2021 comes along, and I had mom and Danny in ICU, Polly in the hospital at the same time at one point, with prior to him passing, another aunt and uncle and another great aunt, like all in the hospital at the same time. Uh, in the midst of trying to move and like all the chaos that came with 2021. So again, like more steps on what whoever came up with the hero's journey, kind of like their ladder and doing that. And I think the reason that Alok wants us to share our hero's journey is so that I can say, hey, I was there. I've dealt with addiction. I've dealt with loss. I've dealt with breakups. I've dealt with all of those things. And it is possible to get to the other side and have a happy ending and embrace those lessons that we learn along the way. So I love that this was part of the challenge. I don't know that the journey is over, because I feel like I'm always learning. I am sure that 2021 isn't going to be the last time that challenging things happen in my life. But, I'm here to tell you we are our own heroes in our story, and we actually have choices. The choices come from what we decide to do with what's happening. Do we decide to go drink and gamble, or do we decide to find a meeting, call a friend, do the thing, that lights us up, and learn from things, and reflect back and grow. And if we do misstep or do something that doesn't have the best result, do we learn from that and keep going? That's what I think the moral of the story is today. Pun intended, about the hero's journey. So that's kind of where I'm at. The beauty of overcoming it and showing you that someone who probably should have been an addict, someone who probably should have been in jail, for drinking and driving, or floating checks, or like all the things, still is somehow here as a podcaster, as a good human being, as an example to the best of her ability for her family, as hopefully an inspiration to you guys that there is hope, as a connector of other people in recovery, and other ambassadors and advocates for recovery, and just human beings, because now my addiction to recovery belief system applies to everybody. Everybody is worth it. Everybody should be living their life and not stuck in the trap of 9 to 5 and the hamster wheel. Everybody should do what lights them up and stop settling and making excuses and wasting more time. And if I didn't go from addiction to recovery, I don't know that I would have those. I know I wouldn't have those perspectives, but I also wouldn't be sharing them with you either. So that's what I got. That's my hero's journey, guys. I challenge you to reflect back on yours. Just for has, think about it. What is something you've overcome? I know you overcame something. We all do. So thanks for tuning in, beautiful people. I will see you next time. If you could leave a review or a rating, it helps get the message out to more people. And just know I appreciate you. Bye.